Yeah, I was disappointed.
Yeah, I really don't have as much to say about this as I thought I might.
Right.
It just, to me, it just was something that didn't really live up to its potential. It wasn't a complete myth, but on the other hand, it wasn't a... It landed somewhere to the side. I will say on the plus side that Cailee Spaeny as Priscilla, as many of the reviews have pointed out, does give a very strong performance. I thought Cailee Spaeny was very good in the part. She just doesn't have a lot to work with. There's not a lot of character development, not a lot of character growth, which makes the end a difficult sell, because this is the part in the movie where we're told rather than shown that this character has undergone growth and is coming into her own, and but we just don't see it. We don't see the character development. We don't really ever get a sense of a personality from this character. And I'm very surprised to say this. I did not think I was going to come out of a Sofia Coppola film saying that the 1980s miniseries of this material was better. But, I mean, here we go. It is what it is.
I think a lot of critics and others were expecting a lot, or at least something special from Sofia Coppola. We have motorcycles, and shortly before we saw this statement from Lisa Marie was released, where she complained to Sofia about the movie, defending her father, but also defending her mother, and indicating that she thought perhaps her mother was being taken a little bit by Sofia Coppola and exploited, because she wasn't going to get the movie that she thought she was going to get, and Sofia Coppola was going to use this. I've lost my wife. Use this to as a vehicle for herself, which is understandable and fine. But I mean, not if she knew that and kind of didn't let Priscilla in on the joke. The movie was kind of boring and aimless and vague, which is fine.
It also makes it a critic's darling.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be honest and call it, at the risk of sounding like a rube, I thought it was boring. I mean, that's really what it comes down to,
Yeah.
It's kind of dull. I mean, I was fidgety. It's an hour less than the Baz Luhrmann movie, but it felt longer.
Yeah. I mean, after all, it's entertainment, and
is it wrong to want to be entertained by entertainment? Yeah. I think in terms of trying to get real insight into these two characters and their story, you're not really going to get that here. In fact, like a lot of the events that are covered are told as fractured vignettes. I think if I didn't know the Elvis story and I didn't know what they were talking about in certain places, I'd be really confused, because a lot of this stuff isn't very well explained. It's very fragmented.
I got to take a moment here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Whatever this is.
It's neat.
I just had to take time out because of this. If anybody knows what that is for, put that in the comments. You know what it may be? It may be that this freezes, and this keeps the ice from sliding off, and yeah, I don't know. I'm grasping at straws. But anyway.
I don't know, but I did want to say this.
Back to the movie.
Back to the movie.
That's how interesting it was that we, I'm being too hard on it, but go ahead.
That really abrupt rest ending, I felt almost like they just kind of ran out of time.
I kind of felt like Sofia wrote a play, because she wrote and directed it. I think she wrote a play and shot a play, and it kind of shows, she came down a tick on this outing. It put me in mind of Lost in Translation, which, I think she owes that movie to Bill Murray's ad lib at the end, where he whispers in Scarlett Johansson's ear. And because when you take that away, and the movie I don't think that movie survives the loss of that ad lib on Murray's part. She's built a career off of that ad lib. And again, this is my opinion. But here she's with somebody who probably, I'm guessing Elordi and Spaeny didn't ad lib much at all, is my guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's face it, Elordi was just glad to be there because he's 8 feet tall.
And on the subject of Jacob Elordi, with the exception of a few, I thought he had a few nice moments. It was spotty. There were some times where he settled in, and I think I was able to accept him in that part a little bit better. But by and large, one of the biggest distractions for me was that he just never clicked in that role. He never felt like Elvis. the greatest disservice that it does Elvis, let's stop for a minute because I'm having a hard time walking and chewing gum at the same time. He's also written in a very flat, one-dimensional way. And so I think that without the content, and it doesn't go into any detail about his life, his career, the complexity of what he was going through. And while I do understand that this is Priscilla's movie and that wasn't the point, and I respect that point, I also think that perhaps maybe it needed a little bit of that to help you understand what was going on a little bit more, to flesh their dynamic out a little bit. I think without giving him that context, you kind of get dysfunctionality without context in a way that just makes him look a little vapid.
My first words after the end of the movie was it was neglect porn.
And I mean, I will say that when the movie ended, I did feel like I had just been trapped in Graceland for years and was being liberated out. So in that sense, I mean, I can see where that could be looked at as an accomplishment, but it didn't cut it for me. And I think for people, I've heard people say that, for fans who are a little bit worried about seeing it or are kind of on the fence about whether they should see it or not, I really, I mean, it's more of the same. It's the same old, same old. It's the stories you've heard before.
It doesn't really do any damage to Elvis. All this stuff is already out there. I mean, he's bulletproof. He's never going to get canceled, and this movie certainly isn't going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think this movie is going to come and go. I don't think we have to worry about it doing any long-term damage or making a dent in his legacy, thing like that. And I think it's maybe a hot topic, in certain social media circles or internet think pieces and things like that for a brief time, but I feel like it's going to come and go pretty quickly. And in terms of the aesthetics, I thought it had some nice moments again. I mean, there were certain images, certain scenes, certain things that were evocative. But, I mean, for the most part, it's a very fragmented series of vignettes that don't really build on each other. Save for some nice moments with aesthetic, I can't help but think that that's being a little bit overhyped.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with some of the costume design, I mean, things like that, the production values. I mean, there were just times where the strained budget was very apparent.
It's a strange thing to harp on anyway. It was pretty. You say that instead of what?
Yeah. I will say in terms of the production value, if I happen to turn on Lifetime and this movie were on, I wouldn't say, wow, Lifetime really went all out with the production value for this movie. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and just to clarify, we went in with a really open mind.
I wanted it to be good.
Yeah, I think we wanted it to be good.
And it didn't suck.
No, it didn't. And I think for people who are fans of the book, fans of their story, fans of the films of Sofia Coppola, a number of different things, like, I think that, you probably will walk away satisfied from it and like it. Those are all things I can get on board with, but, it just didn't come together for me this time.
It's like, I was telling her, it's like it with a piece of art, let's say cinema, sometimes you have to ask, was it worth it? The final analysis. And if something brings it, it justifies its own existence, To me, it's fine, but if I'm being honest, I don't really think it was worth it, We're not losing anything if it never got made.
Yeah, and I will say that one bit of baggage that I did go into it with is that being that it clamored so hard to ride the coattails of the Baz Luhrmann film, I did feel like that put a little bit more onus on it to, in some ways these movies are very different. Stylistically, they're very different. They're telling different stories. So you could make the argument that it's not fair to compare them. But I think that if it was going to benefit from riding the coattails of that film, it is fair to also, another consequence of that is that it's going to be compared. And I have to say in the final analysis, no comparison.
Yeah, I left this feeling like when Baz went to work, he couldn't wait to get to work. He loved it at work. There's nowhere place else he would have rather have been day after day over several years. And I feel like after a month of shooting, like Sofia was late for the door.
Well, the last, 10 minutes or so when the story wraps up definitely feel that way. It's very rushed.
Because we wanted to keep this short and sweet.
And then we started rambling.
Yeah, well, you know how we are. But I mean, I'd say go see it, but you can take it from there. Some people are going to love it, and that's fine. It's cool,
Yeah, I mean, and I hope some people do,
And like I didn't hate it. I just don't respect it very much. I just don't feel like it really brought a lot to the table.
It was just kind of there, or maybe it was that there was no there.
I'd wait for streaming.
Yeah, and that should be in like 2 days. So I shouldn't also occasionally be thinking that the actor who's playing Elvis resembles Bob Saget. Just a side note.
For me, it was kind of Big Bird, Chewbacca.
I do have to say that scene where he's shown on stage, filmed from behind, in Vegas, dancing.
That definitely broke it for me.
Well, there were a couple times where I felt like it was poking fun of Elvis, like when there's the little passage on his spiritual era. I really felt that was very reductive toward him. There was just something about the tone that felt mocking, and that took me out of the narrative a little bit. I didn't like it. You know, of course, I can't read Priscilla's mind, and and
I can.
I can't attest to that for a fact.
I got it right here.
But, I mean, I'm picking up what you're laying down, I'll just say that.
Yeah, scholars would argue, but, that's why there's so many of us and not just one person. So it's all good. If you have opinions on the movie and comments to make, knock yourself out, go nuts. We're kind of done with it, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we've lived with this movie now for a year in one form or another. I'm glad we can move on now.
And I do hope that some people really like the movie, I do.
There are things to like about it.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I made a rare appearance today. I feel like I needed closure after all this. So I'm going back behind the camera where I belong now.
I'm looking forward to talking about other subjects.
That's all I'm saying. My soapbox collapsed, so I gotta go. Bye, y'all.